Well, it's great to be back. Great to be in the Word with you. Great to be moving into chapter 3 of Hebrews. So if you have your Bible handy, and I pray you do, uh, move over to chapter 3 of Hebrews. We're going to be doing an overview of verses 1 through 6 in chapter 3 before we get into the details. And you should read that if you're not reading it ahead of time. Go ahead and stop the video now. Just pause it and read through that, and then let's come back and take a look at it from an overview perspective. So welcome back. If you stopped the video, I'd encourage you to read ahead. I've asked you before to read through the book, and it's good to follow our outline and kind of read through it. What my practice is, just so you know, is every day I've been reading chapter 1 through 4, really every day since we began this series, since I began recording. And then I'll move on to the next major section, which is 5 through 10. I encourage you to do the same. So it's really a blessing to be able to do that. But let's go over, take a look at Hebrews chapter 3, verses 1 through 6 this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, whenever you're looking at this. And let's remember what we've been seeing in the book is that the writer, speaker, remember I think this is a sermon, is making a case that Jesus is preeminent over the prophets, preeminent over the angels. Now you pick that word preeminent very carefully, because the writer, the speaker, is not disparaging Jesus or any of the others. He's not disparaging the prophets. He's not disparaging the angels. But he's rather saying that they were all anticipating the coming Messiah. So the Messiah is preeminent. It's what they're pointing to. When we come to chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, he's talking about the preeminence over Moses. So he's not in any way saying that Moses was not important because he anticipated Jesus. Rather, he's saying that Moses is important, but Jesus is preeminent. I mean, think about Jesus, even himself, at the end of the Gospel of Luke. He meets those two disciples on the road to Emmaus. And how does he explain himself to them? How does he explain his suffering and death and his resurrection? It says that he begins with Moses and the prophets. He explains them. So they're important. They're very important. I know that there's some today who would say we can discard the Old Testament altogether. Didn't seem like Jesus thought that way. Doesn't seem like the writer of Hebrews thinks that way. So it's not disparaging, but explaining how Moses fit into the progress of revelation that begins with the promises of the Old Testament and progresses through to the fulfillment of the New Testament. They all come together, they all work together. So the method he's making here, the way he's going about this, showing the preeminence of Jesus, is he does this comparison and contrast in chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. As we're going to see, chapter 3, verses 1 through 2 is the comparison with Moses. In other words, he's answering the question, how is Jesus like Moses? What can we learn about Jesus by comparing him, looking at the similarities with Moses? And then in verses 3 through 6, he's going to explain to us the contrast. In what way is Jesus preeminent? In what way does Jesus go beyond Moses? How are they different? So his method then is to show contrast, a comparison first, and then contrast later. So what do we learn from this? Before we go on into the details, we can just use our telescope backwards and see the big picture here. What can we learn from this before we go on? Well, I think one lesson is that everything in the Bible finds its proper place and purpose when it's understood in relation to Jesus. If all we had were the angels, if all we had were the prophets, we would not have salvation. We would not have sanctification as we know it today. Not to say that there wasn't salvation in the Old Testament, but to say that Jesus brings that all together, that Jesus makes it all come up. So everything in the Old Testament is pointing forward to him, pointing forward to his crucifixion, points forward to him in anticipation. And then everything after the crucifixion of Jesus to Revelation points back to him. It's an explanation. So one is the anticipation, the other is in the explanation. And when we take note of Jesus and the more we appreciate him, the more that we have clarity over the whole Bible. So let's keep that in mind. Let's keep Jesus at the center of our study in Hebrews. Not just to know objectively about him, to be able to explain why he's superior, why he's preeminent, not only to explain his place in God's plan, but also to grow in our subjective relationship with him, to connect with him on a personal level, on a person-to-person level, be united with him in his humanity, depend on him in his divinity, have in other words, both our head and our heart together centered in him. No reason to try to separate those two things, no reason to disparage head knowledge over heart knowledge. They go together and they're very important. So let's strive, as the writer of Hebrews is teaching us, keep Jesus at the center and understand all of God's revelation in accordance or as it relates to Jesus. Well, hope this is helpful for you, brothers and sisters. Next time we're going to get into the details. We're going to look at the comparison in verses 1 through 2 and then follow up later in the week with a contrast between Jesus and Moses. See you then. God bless you.